On today's Old World Fanatics, we're chatting more tournaments and other hobby goodness. Enjoy. Welcome to the Old World Fanatics again, your Warhammer fantasy podcast to quench your hobby thirst for all things the old world. I'm one of your hosts, Gomo, and I'm joined again by Andrew and Josh. How is everyone doing on this Monday evening again?
Yeah, we're going
Doing
good, thanks.
very
Gomo.
well. Very well, Andrew.
Josh has got a shiny new thing in front of his mouth
Yeah,
today.
should be nice and clear.
Might be a bit clearer than it used to be, hopefully.
No, that's good. We're
It's
upgrading. It's all the
upgrading.
money that's flowing into the podcast. No,
Yep,
not.
of course.
Yeah, I got a Ferrari parked
Yep.
out the front.
Cool. Well, this is well, it's good that we're trying to keep this weekly cadence up. So that's pretty cool. And today's a good one. We'll do some hobby talk in a minute, but we managed to get a couple of fairly well-known Warhammer TOs and I guess personalities in at least the Australian Warhammer scene. And we're going to talk to them. That's Julian and Ben. We're going to talk to them just later in the show, which is actually the bulk of the show. So we go through a bunch of things about their tournaments that they've run, their gaming history, their thoughts on the old world, and also just their last sort of small tournament they just ran called Retro Hammer. We go through a bit of that. So that's a good 2-hour chat to keep hopefully you listeners entertained while you're painting or whatever, or list scheming like Andrew does, and stuff like that. So yeah, this one we'll probably just talk a little bit about what we've been up to the last week in hobby, but outside of that, then we'll cut over and have a chat to Ben and Julian. So who wants to go first with hobby?
I guess I can go first. I mean, I've still just been working on the same stuff that been working on for the last couple of weeks, really, which is my little ruins terrain and my little statue thingy. But yeah, sort of building on it. So it was sort of like previous weeks. It was sort of doing all the structure to it and the molding and a bit of early painting. And this week I probably spent an entire day doing flock layers and dirt and getting the glue on it and just getting all the bushes down and painting up the little fox I had going on and the little bird and other little details that
we'll definitely have
put
to
around.
put a link to your Instagram on that one, because did you see it, Andrew, his last post that just went up?
No, I'll have to have a look.
Yeah.
I just put it up today. I had to finish the little tree. The little tree that was next to the statue. Actually, it sort of ended up turning out a bit bigger than I sort of was mentally planning. I think it ended up dominating the piece a bit too much. But I just use a woodland tennis armature. I had a bit of I got this bark stuff from Tree Mendus. I think it's like a British terrain company that you just like coat on the armature, and then I spray the armature with some like spray adhesive, stick on some rubberized horsehair, just like chunks of horsehair that I've sort of like undone, and then stick on some of these little mini nature leaves on top of it. And then sort of, I haven't done this step yet, but I've got to soak it with some Mod Podge or PVA to really sort of set it, and that way it'll make the treat quite sort of resistant to handling.
Oh man, that looks, from the picture you just posted, man, I think we'll have to do a whole episode where you teach us how to build scenery, because it looks awesome.
So this is on your Instagram, not on the...
I should really put it on the podcast Instagram as well after this episode, just so people can find it more easily. I always forget to dual post things, but yeah, it's on mine.
Yeah.
At the moment,
awesome.
Yeah. Did you see it, Andrew?
Nah, I just went to Old World Fanatics. I haven't actually added anybody on Instagram because, I'm just.
Oh, that's your personal one though, isn't it?
Well, I've only ever had I'm not too, I've only ever had Facebook
Technical.
and back in the day MySpace. So I only created the
MySpace.
Yeah. I only jumped on the Instagram for the Old World Fanatics.
Oh, so you've got an actual Instagram account now, for this stuff?
Oh no, I only jumped on the Old World Fanatics, so I haven't got a personal one.
Oh right,
so,
okay, you're logged in as the cool. No worries. all good.
I might have to
You can
make
use
one.
that one.
Yeah. Give me an excuse.
Cool. What have you been up to, Andrew?
Well, as I was talking to you guys about, I went out and procured a nice bit of classic scenery. Most people would probably be familiar with it. It's the dwarven fortress, like the mountain terrain or like the hill, and it's got like the little sort of like wall around it. It's got like so it's something I've always wanted, and you always got those. You see somebody might sell it, it's just gone like straight away. It's always just been like that, and then just happened to just be trolling on Facebook Marketplace, and somebody local was selling it at like a very reasonable price, like it was 60 odd dollars.
When did that one come out then? Because I wasn't
it
didn't
was a
realize it
while
was
ago.
sort of official.
Yeah, it was kind of like GW back in the day did I think there was like an old school cemetery and like an old school orc village as well. So it's kind of like a foam, and they've basically just obviously they got a mold, and then they just paint it and flock it, so it's kind of all ready to go. But that would have come out, I'm guessing, like mid-90s, maybe.
Oh, yeah, actually, you know what? I do remember it now but yes,
It's going back a while,
I've got it
yeah.
up here. Yeah,
But yeah, no, it's
but it's not their plastic terrain.
no, yeah, it's foam.
Yeah,
It's foam, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
all painted, ready to go. But yeah, no, they're getting on a bit now. It's funny how old some of these things are. They're getting into antiques almost. But yeah, that and
makes you feel a bit old.
Yeah, it does. And just putting together some Storm Fiends again. But yeah, we won't talk about what system that's
that
from.
is Skaven scheming.
Yeah, that is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's
None of that in
that's
6th
the
edition.
round.
No. Yeah.
Is that for round bases or is that for 9th?
Look, it is for round bases, but I've been playing a lot of round bases at all. So yeah, I'm just putting them together for the moment.
Yeah. You're allowed to play multiple games. It's fine.
But you just can't talk about it.
This isn't a 6th edition podcast. And that's just because that's all we got until the old world.
I'll just lose all my credibility, But yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get much done in a week, I guess, is the thing, doing weekly podcasts.
Too frequently,
yeah.
What have you been up to, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, well, not a whole lot. I mean, I got cranked out those dry brushes that I bought or got for Father's Day just to try. So I am painting 5 skeleton horsemen just because that was the only unpainted things in my display cabinet. So I thought I might just try it because I'm trying to get like more of a wet dry brush, if you know what I mean, wet dry brush of the white. Sort of working, but I mean, I don't know. My technique's probably not as good as what these guys who sell the actual dry brushes tell you to do. So I'll probably just fall back to normal dry brushing half the time. So, but then the other thing I did do, because they're nearly finished, but pulled out 10 of those Empire. We started playing around. Well, this is for the listener. Us 3 started playing around with the idea of doing army book reviews. We think we've got one coming up, and not to spoil it, but we think it's the Empire. We'll see how we go. But because of that, I started looking at Empire lists, and obviously I've got an Empire army, and I was trying to work out how the hell do you make a 6th edition list without, because I don't have swordsmen or great swords. But yeah, I just got some missile troops. I've got crossbowers and the handgunners that I've never painted them for 8th. So I thought, I'll paint up the 10 crossbowers, but also sort of using some of the contrast paints. That's going to be what I want to try to do. So try and match the contrast paints, but with my old scheme, to see if I can speed it up again. But the yellow, I tried 2 different yellows, and it's not the same. So I'm going to just probably have to do the yellow, because I was using like Avalon Sunset with, I think, Agrax over, like a really dirty yellow.
Yeah.
And the contrast is either too dirty, or it's, if I do it on, super white or grey background, it's too bright. So,
you could always mix them.
Yeah, no, it's true. I could. But I mean, for the rest of it's good. Like all the leathers, the blacks. I love the black Templar. Is it the black? It's because I used to use this. It's like what's game color? What's that Vallejo game color? I used to use this dark it's not black, but it was like almost a dark charcoal.
Yeah.
And it was really good for black because it wasn't black, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Charcoal
love the Black
brown?
Templar because you just, you know, if you, I always do still a black undercoat, but then I dry brush, you know, a couple of layers of white on it or different color highlights depending on what I want to do, and then I contrast in the black, so the black still looks, I don't know, it looks good. It looks like it's got a bit of like highlights to it. So, and because my Empire is Avalon, so they're yellow and black, there's a fair bit of black. So I think the contrast will speed it up still. I just need to, just playing around with it, trying to match it, you know, with my other stuff. That's all. So, yeah. And then obviously we went down a 3D printed discussion on the weekend when I was looking for Empire people. Dobbed himself in that he's got a 3D printer. So then I started hitting him up for what Empire can I get printed.
Yeah.
But anyway. So.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Josh.
Yep. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do have a bunch of Empire that, I was already printing, and yes, I quite happily print extras of.
But I don't know. I'm tempted now. I might just see. I'm not that I'm putting you under the pump here or anything, Josh. I might see what they look like. You know, I just want to see what I can get out of that and that, because I saw your peg knights and all that are 3D printed and half your. But are they?
Yeah, like yes, I got 3D scans of, cults that were like of the original war horses, and just was able to print off extras. Sometimes I would mirror them just for like extra variety.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a subtle thing that I don't think anyone would ever notice. But some of those war horses in the Bretonian army are, they're not possible to have gotten in any other way apart from 3D printing, because they're actually backwards.
Yeah.
So really, I'll send them so you can see them. But it's as good as any other molding technology or anything like that. Like, there's maybe if you look really closely, you can just see a print line, but it's certainly when you've got when you primed it. It's like they can't
primed
even,
and painted, and then
really,
3 feet away, you're not going to notice.
No, but even 5 centimeters away, like, it's really. And if you were to get a printer, like mine's 2 years old,
well,
like the resolution's double.
That's
in
what the
terms
one
of
I
the
sent you
entry
was the
level
4
ones.
or 8K one that I was just because I went off some YouTube channel.
Like the 8K, 8 or 12K Saturn now, like those ones are really, really high resolution. So, I mean, you're still always going to have a little bit of problems with, just supports and trying to get rid of them, and it's hard sometimes, depending on where the supports are, avoiding a little bit of disfigurement in certain areas, I suppose. But that depends on the design of the supports and the type of thing, which then leads down a tunnel of the fairly involved. This is 3D printing is a whole hobby within a hobby, and it actually takes, like, there's 3 different areas of, it's setting up the printer, knowing how to deal with the physical side of it, but it's also digitally knowing how to do supports, that type of thing, depending on the model. Like, a lot of the patrons will have pre-supports and that type of thing as well. But if you're just getting random stuff off,
like if you actually just buy decent STLs and all that crap, does they have it all? You don't have to worry about it if you're prepared to spend the money.
Depends. Like certainly it's a lot more common to get pre-supports, and almost all the patrons that you pay for, they will almost always have supports. But if you're just like getting random stuff off Thingiverse or like free stuff, or as I said, I've been able to find GW scans for stuff, and they never have supports, because you're just lucky to get a scan, because they're hard to find because GW cracked out on it. They get them removed periodically, and it's like, oh damn! So you got to grab them if you find them, basically. So those ones you kind of got to do yourself. So you actually, it's a bit of a learning process about how to do supports in a way that you get a model that's, comes off the printer okay. That's that doesn't just fail, just come off the support, and you get a complete failure, or the support doesn't affect the print itself if you get a successful print. So there's quite a bit to learn in that regard, but I'm making it sort of sound more complicated than it needs to be, because if you just get pre-support stuff off of Patreon and put it in a printer with the appropriate settings,
and good
it'll
resin,
print, and you'll be like, oh, this is actually really easy.
yeah, well, yeah. I'm all for laziness, and I would never do this to not spend money on. Like, I'm really keen to spend money on, the old world and all that stuff. It's just that it's that variety, and especially when you're doing stuff like 6th edition now, where you like can't even get half the stuff.
Yeah.
To have some of
Yeah.
that variety,
Yeah, that's it.
and just the different theme lists, like it's cool to go. Oh, I'm going to do. You see some of these armies out there that are just totally different, but you sort of know it's it's an orc army, but it's massively themed, some other way, undead or whatever, and you're never going to get that out of GW. So,
Nah, well, yeah, it's just going to support everything, like Josh was doing with his basing, his all his mushrooms
terrains and
yeah,
I know
exactly, yeah, it's
yeah,
just
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, it unlocks a lot of options for
Yeah.
you in a way that
Yeah.
I just like I didn't even realize when I bought the printer, because I bought it for Warmaster, how many options it would give me in lots of other areas of hobby.
Yeah. Nah, well, you've convinced me. I'll just I'll see how we go. Got a lot of things on, but yeah, I've already loaded up my Amazon wish list and got Josh to check it and send it. Anyway, cool. Well, that's my hobby. So, apart from starting to do a bit of research on the army building stuff, army book stuff, but army book review for the next couple of episodes. But yeah, that's all
I'm
good.
really keen.
Yeah.
I was having to read them. It's weird when you start reading other army books. You're like, oh, this is really awesome. It's like it's almost like every other army is really good except for your army.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
yeah,
I always
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like
It's
that.
just like, oh, I wish I had this or this banner or this thing.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, that'd be so good.
Yeah.
It's the genesis of starting a whole new army, isn't it?
Yeah,
Hard to
yeah.
resist once you go into the book and go, oh, I can play with this, I can play with that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Cool. Well, should we crack on with the interview or?
Oh, I had one more
yeah.
thing. Don't know if I should plug this.
Plug
Why
it.
not? Why
Plug
not plug
away.
this at this point? Sure.
You can't not plug it now.
Yeah, of course. Right. So I think it's just about to become formalized, in that I am trying to put together a little slow grow
Awesome.
in Melbourne, in East Melbourne, in out of House of War. I put up a little post on the Melbourne Hammer group and had probably more interest than I was expecting. Really, there's quite a few people that were like, "Oh, yeah, be keen," depending on schedule and timing and how frequently it is. Anyway, I was hoping for the end of October to start, and I contacted House of War, and they were like, "Oh, we just had a Flames of War tournament confirmed yesterday for that day, so we pushed it back a little bit to the 12th of November on the Sunday at 10 a.m. hopefully. And I was sort of going to do 6 weekly, but 6 weeks after 12th of November is Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
So I was like, not going to happen there. So I feel like, because it's a little bit later anyway, I was like 2 weeks later than I was sort of thinking, should give people enough time that maybe on the 10th of December they'll be okay to go, like 4 weeks, and then maybe keep doing it like every sort of 5 or 6 weeks after that. But yeah, at the moment I don't really have I'm about to set up the event page. At the moment it's just a post on Melbourne Hammer, but I'll shortly have an event page up and I'll be able to put it on House of Wars page as well. But if people have any questions, they can either message me on the Facebook or through podcast socials, or through the Melbourne Hammer group.
Yeah, and we'll obviously keep it up to date, because obviously people will want to do it locally if they're locally, but if you just want to paint up an army and follow along and sort of stay in that same time frame,
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Because I'm trying to make it a fairly slowish pace. I'm only starting at 400 points, for the first.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that, because
and
then you say you think you're doing what, 6th edition warbands.
Yeah, well, for the first one, which is like it's just to make it a bit easier to have a few different units without having or not spending a huge amount of points. So warbands, I mean, it's really the same as all the rules for the game are the same as regular. It's really just in list construction, and it basically just means you can have units of just a couple of guys rather than having to have full size units as a minimum. And there's a couple other rules for like, if you have characters or not, you can actually just, you have a champion as a general, and it's actually quite a good document, because it breaks down for each faction, if they have any other limitations or any other stuff, like in terms of they can only field one of this unit or they can't field any of that unit.
Yeah.
And they've got broken it down for all your other Storm of Chaos and Back of the Book. Well, not sure Back of the Book, but definitely the Storm of Chaos and a bunch of other of your specialist lists.
Yeah.
They've also done that for those too. So it's actually quite a this is the beauty of 6th edition, right? They've done so much. They've done so much for it. So I was going to use the Warbands rules for the first 400 points. I think Warbands works for up to 500, so the next one's 600. So it'll be back to regular points after that. But yeah, I'm just going at 200 point increments every sort of maybe 5 to 6 weeks or so.
That's good. That's just like what, one unit effectively, or
Yeah. So it shouldn't be too hard to do. Because it's hard to design a slow grow where you're not putting too much pressure on people, that people are just dropping out because they just like, oh, I can't keep up with this. It's too stressful, not worth it. So I think a nice, just like how CanCon was, 4 games over 2 days with a 2-hour break between. I feel like we've all gotten older. You don't want to put everyone just wants to have a nice relaxed pace. And that's a feeling behind running the slow grow like that.
Oh, cool, man.
Well,
we'll definitely plug it on our pod, but also obviously the socials and oh, sorry, my throat. The show notes, I'll put links and all that sort of stuff on the show notes so people can start following along and then making a decision if they want to get involved in some fashion, even if it is remote. So cool, Josh. Thanks for putting the effort on for that. That's cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, should we get on to it to have a chat to Julian and Ben?
Yep.
Sounds good.
Let's do it.
Transition away.
All right. So we're joined by Julian Merker and Ben Halliday, two fairly well-known personalities in the Warhammer community nationally. Ran CanCon this year, and I think may have run further tournaments well before that as well. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first.
Do you want to go?
I'm Julian. Do you want any more detail than that?
Maybe, yeah. Well, I just want to see you guys to say hi, really. I didn't want to say too much more than that.
Sure. Hello.
Ben? Is Ben there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hello,
Okay.
everyone.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, can't see the video. Yeah.
Long-time listener, first-time caller to this one. I know. So this is like your 4th episode, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it's pretty early on. Yeah, pretty early on.
Yeah.
We're slowly getting the hang of it.
We had to get some celebrities in to try and boost our numbers. That's what it was.
Well, there you go. We're here now.
All right. So yeah, do you guys want to say, maybe Julian first, but you can both tell us how you guys got into wargaming and Warhammer in general?
Yeah, sure. I started back in like 1997. I think probably like a lot of people, one of my good mates bought the 5th edition starter kit, and he very kindly gave me all the Bretonians out of it, and he kept the lizardmen.
Oh, amazing!
And,
that's a good friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of just went from there. So playing 5th edition, we were like 12 years old at the time. So like, no psychology, no running away, none of that silliness, just 2 armies, charge them straight into each other and fight to the last man. That was it. But yeah.
Very similar tale. I've heard that a few times. So.
Yeah. And then, sort of been playing since then. I think I had maybe like 6 years off when I first started working full time. Became a bit too busy for things, but came back to it maybe about 12 years ago now. Just still loving it, loving Warhammer.
So 6 years, was that like when would it?
That was most of 7th edition actually.
Okay.
So I came back just as 8th was dropping, and I got back into it with 8th. Yeah, and then since then, branched out beyond Games Workshop as well. So play lots of different war games at the moment.
Is that as in after 8th ended as such? Is that when it changed?
Definitely, yeah. 8th was like a real catalyst. When it ended, up until then, I'd only played Games Workshop games. So, Necromunda, Mordheim, and 40k and fantasy. But since then, just branched out into other things. So Ben and I, we do a lot of gaming together. So we play Oathmark, Warlords of Erewhon. Yeah.
Ben's struggling there.
Yeah.
Can you hear us, Ben? He's back.
Sorry, fellas.
You're right.
back.
Yeah, dropped out on me.
That's okay.
Just giving you all a sense of. I think I'm well aware of Julian's backstory, so I'm like the other villain in the comic book. But Julian and I have been playing war games with each other for quite a while now. Pretty much when 8th kicked off. But myself, I'm a more rarefied, wonderful vintage. I can vaguely remember playing with a handful of models for 2nd edition Warhammer that a kid around the corner had this thing. When I remember some older kids had some nice Dungeons and Dragons models back in the day, but 3rd edition was a big thing for me as a teenager in the mid to late 80s. I get very nostalgic watching Stranger Things. And I think 3rd edition in particular, I love that old book. The old First Warhammer Armies book was always quite a big thing for me. But I was always attracted to war games and toy soldiers even as a kid. So Warhammer's been a bit of a constant there, but I definitely had a big break, like a lot of people do,
I did.
going do life stuff for a bit. Different priorities, but the great thing about this hobby, it's something to fall back on and another way to go and socialise and meet new and interesting people and break their hobbies. I mean, no, sorry, have lots of fun with each other.
It is, isn't it? It's a
Yeah,
fantastic
so, yeah.
way of meeting new people. And there's
Yes.
definitely been periods in my life too where that's been a major reason to go out and play it. If you're in a new environment or you've moved to a different state or something and you don't know anyone, there's always a little community there if you find that where you've got all these people in common.
And especially, I mean, it's the proper type of people who do tend to gravitate to these hobbies, a bit more, introvert and stuff. It's like this common denominator. You sit across the table from someone that you never met, but yeah, by the end of it, you're probably good mates. Like it's like I've found that I've been in, I started in 3rd, but it was always just working, playing in my bedroom basically, and it was only in 8th that I started. That's where I met Josh, playing actual tournaments, and so I'm a bit sort of new in that regard, but it's the one thing I loved when 8th was at least at its heyday, and then when it died, I was like, oh, it felt like a kick in the guts because I was like, I'm going to miss a lot of these people, especially when people moved away as well. It's like, yeah, it's a crazy, I don't know, I just love it. It's probably the best part of the game.
Yeah. So are you guys mainly playing fantasy these days and a particular edition?
I would say we
what
mainly
are you spending your time doing?
I would say we mainly play fantasy games, but not necessarily Warhammer fantasy. So we mix it in with Oathmark and Warlords of Erewhon, which are both other fantasy rule sets.
Are they like rank and flank? Are they like skirmish?
Oathmark's rank and flank. It's actually really similar to Warhammer Fantasy. The main difference is that you have alternating unit activation, but otherwise you've got rank and flank sort of formations, individual figure removal, that sort of thing. But it's quite an interesting game to play because you can't just like alpha strike someone's army, come in and destroy their whole army in one go. You can always respond to their move with your own counter move. So yeah, we like playing that. You can actually use Warhammer figures for it. We also use Lord of the Rings figures and others. And then Warlords of Erewhon, which we've just started giving a go maybe 12 months ago. It's more of a skirmish style. But it's also by Rick Priestley, who did Warhammer. So it's one of his other games.
Okay. Yeah.
And is that alternating activations as well?
That it's more like if you're familiar with bolt action, where each unit you have on the board, you put a dice in a bag, and then you draw dice out of this bag, and you give each unit an order. So it might be alternating, but sometimes you might get a run of 3 or 4 dice in a row, and you can.
Yeah, right.
So it's a bit more random.
You don't really know what's going on. Yeah, that's fun.
A bit less predictable. Which definitely makes for interesting games.
So you guys, I don't know, we got you guys both on because obviously you've been TOing, but like, do you want to give us the listeners a bit of a background on the scene that you're actually operating in? I'm guessing you're both in Canberra.
I'd say there's a pretty Canberra is quite well known for having quite a sizable gaming community, proportionally for its population. We do, as a city, host the largest wargaming or tabletop gaming event in Australia, which is called CanCon. And as a byproduct, probably partly because of that, CanCon's been going for 40 years. There are not as many independent trading stores as you'd think there would be, but there are definitely all sorts of quite interesting communities out there. There's a tabletop gaming club connected to the ANU. Because we're a bit of a university town. As a byproduct of that, there are people who like throwing dice. There's a big card playing sort of community. There's also people that are into, obviously, Games Workshop. There's a couple of stores in our city that help sort of, with that sort of crowd there. And like we were involved with a group called Northside Wargamers. There's also a regional wargaming group over in the other southern bit of ACT, and you've got the Canberra Game Society, which hosts and puts on CanCon. Some of the various groups around, but there are also little tiny groups that are sort of connected and do their own things. Jolt is an important venue as a store that's got quite a good tables and is able to put on fairly sizable little events for people. So we're pretty fortunate to have options like that. Jolt Games are a great venue for people to organise a tabletop event, particularly a proper war game as opposed to a small size game. So yeah, I guess that's the area where we find ourselves operating in. There's a good little Warhammer 6 edition sort of thing that we've found ourselves involved in the last couple of years, and that's partly people waiting for the old world, and as well as partly people who've come to embrace 6th edition as the the champagne edition of it. What do you reckon, Julian? Anything more to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that for most games that you want to pick up and try, including Warhammer Fantasy, you can always sort of just message on some Facebook group somewhere, and there's somebody playing it, and you can get a game, which is a great thing about Canberra. I love that. The Warhammer Fantasy scene, I'd say last year it was really strong. Ben and I put on 3 events before CanCon, and yeah, I'd say the community was pretty active. Lots of posts, people posting what they were doing, armies they were working on, things like that. This year, after we ran CanCon, I think we were a little bit burnt out because that was our 4th event in maybe about 7 or 8 months. Plus, we're doing other gaming as well for other game systems. So yeah, we hadn't hosted anything up until a couple of weeks ago, and I definitely noticed like a drop down in the level of activity on Facebook and things like that, and just people catching up for games. So it was a little bit unfortunate. I guess we didn't see another tournament organizer step up to organize an event. And I think some of the momentum was coming from the fact that there were regular events.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things where, like, how long will that enthusiasm, if it is to do with, say, the old world coming back, or obviously 8th gone and now there's a bit of stability with 6, like how long is that going to go without anything new, without any juice coming in, I guess, into the into it. Now we'll get onto that, I think, but I probably jumped the gun a bit there, Josh. I was going to just circle back with your fantasy sort of background. You talked about a little about the editions that you've played and things like that. But what's your favorite armies, guys? Like, what do you tend to play in fantasy?
I'll go first. So my favorite's definitely my Empire. I had them shortly after my mate gave him those Bretonnians back in '97. The first thing that I started buying was Empire, and I played them right through 6th edition back in the day, and then when I got back into it in 8th edition, I played them right through 8th. I haven't played them just sort of in the last 18 months because I, after 8th died, I rebased them for Kings of War, which I regret now. And I just haven't got around to rebasing it back to individual bases. But yeah, I do love the Empire just because, not that they were ever particularly good, I don't think, in any edition, but they just had something to do in every phase of the game, and they're just a really interesting army to play. You've got lots of infantry, cavalry, magic, shooting, fast units, anvils. It was just a great variety, which just makes it a fun army to play.
Yeah, I started out collecting high elves actually. Yeah, random. I think in particular the first high elves and wood elves really. I remember the first ever box set GW put out, which came with like 60 figures. You got 10 dark elves, 10 wood elves,
Oh,
10
yep.
skaven. That was an
Oh,
awesome
God.
set. It was like just changed the whole game, changed the hobby altogether. Because prior to that, people would just buy a blister pack but really sort of starting to actually buy, create units and things like that was really cool. So yeah, a lot of high elves and wood elves for a long time, a lot of high elves for a long while. You'd have to buy often I'd buy your own your opponents. I often just played against orcs and goblins with my brothers and things like that. But in recent years, when I took up eighth, when I got back into playing wargaming, I was doing a lot with high elves. And in sixth edition, I've mucked around a bit more with wood elves and Bretonnians, which has been fun.
Very
And right
nice.
now, I'm working on. I inherited a whole bunch of fifth edition metal beastmen models, which I've
Oh, wow.
Okay.
yeah, they're beautiful models, and I've been stripping
Yeah.
them, doing the different varnish and isopropanol
Mm.
baths and getting all the paint off them and getting them ready. It's a bit of a slow process, but I'm doing a bit of a mixed lot of new and old models for that. And the idea is that they'll be able to try to set them up so I've got something that I'll ready to go to play with once that set of rules one day has happened. So yeah, those are the things I've sort of played with in Warhammer.
I was interested in going for a little bit forward though, and just asking about how you guys got into TOing events and what was the attraction there, like how, because I take it was mainly in eighth when you started playing again that you started to do that, or were you even doing it earlier on?
For me, I first started TOing during 8th edition. I ran a couple of events through stores because that was kind of pretty easy. The store would manage the ticketing and things like that. And back then, I was sort of friends with some of the other TOs, and they talked to me a bit about like the burnout feeling that they would be feeling from running too many events. So I tried to like run sort of like one a year, so like take a bit of that load off, and some other people did the same thing. And then I also started
Right.
doing a few events just from my home because I had like a big shed that could fit 6 tables in it, so I could have 12-player events at home. So yeah, started doing some of those, and with the stuff that I was doing from home as well, I was able to. I don't know if you remember, but like back in 8th edition, the player packs often used to be like really detailed and unique for a lot of events. And I think players back then didn't mind so much about having to read a detailed players pack and tailor their army to suit it. So I had a lot of fun with that. So setting up, I guess, more unique army building challenges and trying to promote a
Right.
more less competitive side of the gaming, taking encouraging and rewarding taking weaker choices and more choices that you wouldn't see on the table as often. So I liked
Okay.
sort of doing it from that perspective to try and set like a fun event rather than a competitive event.
And did you have to,
Right.
with that, was that like, have you ever run into like in 8th, there was a lot of like the, comp systems, like Swedish comp came in and
Yeah.
things like, was that something that you guys had to deal with, or did you use this sort of, scenarios and structures and stuff
For
rather than?
8th edition or for 6th?
For 8th, but I guess, have you found was there anything, I wasn't competitive in 6th, so I don't even know if that was a thing, like in terms of comps.
Yeah,
6th.
I think for 8th, I definitely like took sort of inspiration from the Swedish comp pack, where taking certain choices would give you like a higher potential swing the final battle points at the end of the game in your favor. Like if you had more weak choices than your opponent, and let's just say the game ended in a 10-10 draw, but if you've got more weak choices, the result might swing to an 11-9 or a 12-8. So yeah, I liked that concept.
Well,
Yeah, sorry, I just disconnected my headphones and just have to go straight to just as a theory. Yeah, dropping it. Yeah, well, look, with the tournaments, with what Julian's my experience is pretty similar with Julian. We both pretty got into doing tournaments after having played a lot of tournaments, and Swedish was Swedish is a lot of fun. One of the fun things about Eighth and Warhammer is actually list design. But as people know, certain position editions have been better than others in terms of what's been relatively balanced, or good at actually encouraging a healthy tournament scene as opposed to an unhealthy one. I guess is that trying to get that balance between that, versus people who want to just play, want to play narrative and just throw some dice. It's a bit hard to try to get that correct balance. But yeah, Swedish was an interesting one because he'd have some pretty wild, yeah, like Julian was saying, swingy sort of makeups of different armies. Someone who was really good could play something that on paper was relatively weak, because they're really good with the Swedish handicaps that was used with comp. They could still come out ahead and do quite well.
I was going to
But
say, no, that's all right. That's all great. With the TOing, you mentioned sort of the whole burning out, and obviously you guys, ran, what was it, 3, and then CanCon, which I'm guessing was quite large as well.
Yep.
I guess, what have you learned from that, and how would the scene, what can we do as like attendees and stuff, or other people who might want a TO to take the pressure off? So, because it feels like you're right, we need more events, but we don't want anyone burning out, or in your case, not being able to play in them as well if you're doing
or
this
having
TOing.
other people TOing on a more regular basis might help take the pressure off individuals who tend to do it quite frequently.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the main thing, because I think with obviously neither of us played at CanCon, and then with the 3 that we ran last year, I think I played in like 1.5 of them. So you do sort of take yourself out from playing a lot, and I think just having more people helping out or just running a small event would be really good for the scene, and just really good for making sure the burden's not just laying with a small number of people. Running a small event like 12, 15 players or something like that, it's super easy. It requires hardly any effort or preparation at all. You can make a lot of effort out of it if you want to check army lists and things like that. But if you just sort of put a basic pack together, tell people to turn up, manage the ticketing through a store, there's very little to do. And I think if people did sort of just one event a year and sort of took their turn, that would, I think be really good for the scene.
Yeah, I was going to say Julian's spot on there. There's something Brad from Cast Dice often says. Look, if you get 6 people, you've got a day. You've got a tournament. I think people can twist themselves up on thinking that they need to have something huge. It really doesn't have to be huge at all. Some of the most fun events you can run is probably around a dozen people. Even small little days out, you go, okay, we're going to play 3 games, and might have 8 people or 6 people. That's totally fine. But regularity is really important to sort of keep things chugging along. Absolutely. But also providing a bit of space between events too. So there's an element of planning, and I guess you sort of need some people to sort of step up and talk to others that are also generally organising events and put their hands up to sort of take turns doing things. I think we had this situation where we organised quite a few things, including I was doing for 1 year, for a little bit, a year and a bit during COVID. I was arranging a meetup for a bunch of people, and we'd often have 6 to 8 people sort of turn up, and always different people. But that sort of fell by the wayside once I stopped turning up. It did run independently, but just probably really needed some other people to just put their hands up. So I guess if you're looking at trying to create a scene, I guess it's sort of trying to have a few more conversations with the people you're attracting about, hey, do you want to do this one, in 2 months' time, or things like that might be a way around it. Um, it's not just people, life happens. We have to factor that one in, but it's important to just sort of try to be a little bit modest in your planning and modest in what you're expecting is going to happen, and then you can get pleasantly surprised, I think.
Yeah. Do you think there's, because obviously, like what I've found, and I think everyone who's at least played Warhammer Fantasies found this. Obviously, after 8th died, the community fragmented into like Kings and 9th, and then now you got the 6th, and then some people still play 8th. So, do you think one of the critical things, even before Old World, which may or may not bring some of that back, but let's be honest, there's still going to be Kings of War and all that. Is it, should we be stepping up as at least the fantasy side of, tournament running to try and get a consistent, whether or not, it's also like, like 40K's got, they use the same type of tech, in terms of logging the tournaments. You can go to like websites where you see all the tournaments, at least in Australia. I know overseas they do that. But it feels like in fantasy, even when 8th was around, maybe the tech was different back then, but it wasn't like, I don't know. It's just like random Facebook group advertises, tournament a few months out. Like there doesn't seem to be a lot of coordination between, at least in Australia, between even the states who might run them. And I'm wondering if, that might be a good place to sort of kick in and help sort of facilitate that as well. Sort of connecting to TOs, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when we go to put something on, I don't even know where else to advertise it except Facebook. Like back in the day, there was the forums. What was
Wargamer AU?
Wargamer AU.
Wargamer AU.
Is that dead? I haven't even gone to it.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's gone.
Okay.
Pretty close.
Okay.
Which I loved that. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah.
But nothing like that exists anymore. So yeah, at the moment, stick it on Facebook and hope that people are looking at it.
Yeah, because I think there's obviously, there's probably only a handful of Facebook groups that if you're in, you probably will find that event potentially. But I feel like I was listening to, it might have been a 40K one. I can't remember, but they were just saying like, it's easy to run a small event because everything's done on the phone and you just log your own score. And that way I can play, like as a TO, I can play because they know, they get a text message where the next game is, what table number, like the system does it. And I'm like, why aren't we doing this? Like we're, fantasy.
That's actually
we're smarter than 40K players.
That's actually a real difficult thing at the moment with 6th edition. So there was a website that we were using called tabletop.to last year, and then they shut down. I think it was around October last year, and it handled a lot of different scoring systems, including the one that we use for our tournaments, which is where there's 20 points on offer for each game. A lot of the 40K and Age of Sigmar apps and websites and stuff that I've seen, they're all sort of win, draw, loss or some other sort of scoring system. And yeah, I actually haven't found anything that I sort of found user-friendly and suitable. So yeah, for the small events that we've been running here, which are, generally like around 15 or less players, I've either been doing it on pen and paper and I just do the draw that way, or for the last one, I just put a spreadsheet on my phone and did it that way and, sorted columns and things like that. And it worked perfectly fine. And for CanCon, we just had Ben's laptop with an offline bit of chess tournament management software, which allowed you to input any sort of scoring system you wanted. And it would do Swiss pairing and also managing tables and things like that. So yeah, that was actually quite handy, and didn't need an internet connection either. But obviously, like the stuff like that 40K uses and like what Tabletop TO used to do, where players log their own scores. That is so much better. And if we had something like that for fantasy, it would make running it as a TO a lot easier and allow you to potentially play in the event.
Yeah, potentially. Because I saw when I was down in Victoria, one of my 6 months ago, I went to a tournament uprising in Ballarat, and the TO there, Ben Koshkamper, he had like 3 or 4 different data points for each player per game, and he was the only TO, and there was 40 of us there. And he was just trying to crunch this data the whole day, trying to get through it all. He was so stressed out by the end of the day because he was just going hammer and tongue the whole time trying to get all this stuff done so that, he could work out the placements by the end of the day and that type of thing. And I think he sort of just because there was no infrastructure that he could rely on for people to put that kind of stuff in themselves, it went all the weight went on him, and I think it made it fairly unpleasant for him, really. Was it nice having both of you TOing CanCon? Like, is that that size tournament? Would you be wanting to? Would it be best to do it as a pair rather than being a single TO for that kind of?
Yeah, I would say a pair is needed.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, because you are having to input the scores and the victory points. And I guess like once about halfway through the round, about half of the time has elapsed, people just start dribbling in pretty constantly. But then there was also just really constant questions. So
Right.
I would just sort of like wander up and down, and like every few tables, someone would stop me to ask a question about the rules, and just assumed I was this encyclopedia of knowledge. Which in the lead up to the event, I think I reread the rule book like 3 or 4 times so that I would be as knowledgeable as possible. But I was really surprised just at people. I guess people want to keep the game moving, so they probably could look it up themselves, but they see you there, so they just ask the question. It was just pretty constantly answering questions, which then you're not back at the table entering scores. So one of us would always be sitting at the table in case someone wanted to come up and ask something else, and then usually one of us would be wandering around.
Yeah, I must admit, when you see the TO there, it is very tempting to go, "Oh, do you know this rule?" Rather than just look it up. I must admit.
And I don't begrudge that, because it does keep the game flowing, because you want everyone to finish 6 turns if they can. So it's good. It keeps the game moving. But I guess I was surprised after having done like 12-player events here, where it's pretty relaxed and you can definitely play in it yourself as long as you don't have odd numbers. Whereas CanCon, like it was pretty busy, and I definitely wouldn't want to do it by myself.
And just so background there, I don't know if we added at the top, like how many people were at the CanCon in January this year?
50, and then we had
50.
we just had one dropout at game 3. So I played game 3, and then we had and then we had one more dropout for game 4. So we went back to even numbers. So we finished with 48.
I think we still hold the record in Australia at the moment for that one, for a 6th edition tournament. So there's we did put down the challenge to other people to organise something bigger, but I mean, as you guys are saying, like there's been some pretty impressive events held in Victoria and elsewhere, which is great. We could have had more as well, but we literally it was getting to that point. I think we were very conscious of what would go into it in terms of that data entry, which you guys are talking about, having to use the chess software, as well as people wanting having lots of questions, and we would have required it to actually sort of expand. We would have needed someone else to actually come and help us, I think, as well as we were literally running out of options for terrain. I mean, 50 people is 25 tables. Yes, the community in the ACT is fantastic, and some of the punters coming in from New South Wales were very good at bringing some equipment. But you can't run a tournament if you're relying from people from interstate. You actually need a good solid base where you're at. So while Julian and I had enough to probably cover at least half the tables, we still had to bring in for the better gear stuff from elsewhere, which we spent a lot of time really sort of vetting and really being very trying to make sure that people from interstate were actually going to come through with the goods, because there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of young blokes like saying that they're going to do something. I was one of them, but you want to make sure that's actually going to happen. So that's a word of caution when you're running a big event, is you really want to be sure you've got the equipment to do it. Would be the other way to do it. And also, Julian's reminded me of back in the old days, and what Josh was saying. The software and the resource management stuff that you're doing online is radically changed from what it used to be, and it was such an onerous task putting together the round back in the day. Sort of 10 years ago, for 8th edition, and I mean we played at. It's 150 players or something for an 8th edition tournament at CanCon. At one point, and I mean one of the TOs got heat exhaustion. I mean, it's just so much pressure on us, really not cool. I think if when the old world hits, if the rules are any good, no doubt there will be a scene, and probably various scenes that'll happen. But I am hopeful that there will be new software that'll be quite accessible, which we'll be able to use and adapt. And then I think, Gomo, you were asking the question about the splittering of various sort of, I don't know, fantasy games and all the rest of it. I think there's an element of like, look, just let a thousand flowers bloom and see what happens. And
Yep.
that's pretty much what's been going on. Keeping an open mind. When this
Yeah.
when the toe happens, though, I think it's going to blow everything away for the first 12 months or so, maybe a bit more longer. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to come in and try it out, and that's great. And you're going to have a lot of different types of players that are going to come in. So it's going to be really great and a lot of fun to sort of see how that goes. But I've got if the rules are complete crap, people are just going to go fall back on things that they're enjoying playing in those communities. And I think that is actually it's a positive thing. There used to be a bit too mono, if you know what I'm talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
people have now got more options now. So I think it's not something to be negative. I think it's actually a very good thing to have lots of options. The hardest things is just trying to keeping your little communities going and sticking to a couple of things for long enough that you're not just falling for the latest pretty thing that comes along and blowing your money. Because we should have hobbies that are sustainable and not just those that are open to those who've got the cash to do it, because it can be expensive.
We talked about this on our like an episode earlier, but seeing Games Workshop, obviously you're always going to have some people who are going to be skeptical about the ability for Games Workshop to actually, create a game and not just turn into a business for them. I mean, they have to obviously make money and things, but we're all pretty, I think the guys on our podcast are quite positive that the changes we've seen out of Games Workshop in the last, since, they're more community driven, and even watching slightly from afar and how they're dealing with 10th edition at the moment, 40K, at least I'm pretty confident that if the old world comes out and there's some major issues or whatever, that they're going to try and address it. Like I'm hoping they will do that, because that's what they seem to be doing with the other games. So compared to what it was in 8th, where you might be lucky to get a FAQ out every whatever it was 1 year, if that. I'm hoping that will help as well. And then obviously they are doing more. I don't know if it's as good as the community, but I know GW are trying to do a lot more to support tournaments too. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. Obviously to support the old world as well in that regard, compared to what they would have done with 8th, I guess. But going on to that, I mean, yeah, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm feeling pretty good about it, to be honest. Like, a lot of people like to rag on GW and say they are terrible at writing rules and balancing the game. And I would have previously agreed with that. However, coming back to 6th edition and also coming back to even 8th edition, so playing a bit of 8th edition last year, when all of a sudden you're not playing at tournaments and you're playing people like in genuinely casual settings, and you're not doing a tournament practice game. The game all of a sudden actually plays a lot better than you realized it did. It was often just one or two unit choices in an army book that maybe broke an army or threw the balance out. Yeah, and when you're just playing with people who aren't interested in trying to break the game, they are fun games. They're fun games, and they're good to play. And I wouldn't say that they're overly complicated. There's certainly simpler ones out there, but yeah, I think if you can find the right people to play with, they're good games. So yeah, I'm not too worried about the old world. I would say that the tournaments will probably be competitive like they always are, and maybe you won't have as much fun there. But I think if you balance it with some casual gaming, it'll probably be fine.
How did you find the intensity of the games in general at the CanCon though? Because I felt like the tournament atmosphere in general was pretty relaxed and casual. Would that line up with how you guys feeling?
We were definitely trying to encourage that. I mean, we obviously weren't playing in the games, but we were trying to, in terms of the army selection, we tried to really encourage people to tone things down a bit. We maybe asked, I don't know, 5 or 6 people to resubmit their lists that we thought were either too strong
Right.
or weren't necessarily strong, but we just thought that they wouldn't actually make for a fun game for their opponent, where it was just simply too much shooting. Couple of armies where it was 100% shooting, and so we sort of said, you need to just make a more interesting game for your opponent. Like there was one where I didn't even think it was particularly good. They probably would have lost most of their games, but it just simply wouldn't have been fun games for the opponent. So we definitely tried to steer people towards building armies that were fun to play with and against, and weren't overly strong. I didn't see anyone at the tournament. No one said anything to me about not having fun or feeling like they played a game where they never stood a chance, from as soon as you put your models on the table. I felt like it went pretty well in that regard.
Yeah, and certainly playing in it, I've certainly felt like the people that were there playing with me were just people that happy to play another fantasy tournament. Like it wasn't like a high intensity atmosphere or anything like that at all. We were just like, it was almost felt like we were just playing 4 casual games, especially because you had a couple of hours between each game on each day, and we're just cruising around. It was really just a nice, relaxed weekend rather than the old 8 game 3-day epic marathon old CanCon that we used to do in 8th.
Yeah, that's definitely what we wanted with the 4 games over 2 days, a more relaxed pace, so that if you in the games leading up to lunch, if you didn't finish them on time, we weren't going to be hassling you for your score. We just let you play into lunch because you had such a long lunch break, so you could take your time, enjoy the game.
We also wanted to I think we spent a lot of time talking about the type of events that we would enjoy in terms of how we designed CanCon, and that's also how we went about our lead in. We did a number of practice runs for CanCon, and we're talking about having like sort of anywhere between 14 and over 20 attending those tournaments, and they were excellent practice. So the idea was that people would actually at CanCon get to enjoy and appreciate CanCon, because like you're saying, Josh, that was always the most disappointing thing, because the Uber tournament scene back in the day there was a lot of people who were quite obsessed with getting themselves up to be on the rankings for the best players in Australia, and also there were people who were really keen to get themselves ranked to go and travel and play Warhammer overseas. And look, that's wonderful. It was one of the part of the scenes, but it lent itself to sort of silly stuff at CanCon, because you got more weighting on the tournament event if you got three games in a day. And CanCon, for example, I think, what was it, eight games over 3 days was nuts one year. It's just not fun. People who were serious competitive players were like, this is just silly. You barely had enough time to use the facilities, let alone eat food.
Became
you never actually
an endurance event
I'd be
more than
drained.
a tournament.
Yeah, I've never done a 3-dayer, but
it was
be
nuts.
insane.
It was,
it was exhausting.
Yeah, it was.
I did also back in 8th edition do. I think it was, what was the standard points back then? I think it was
2,400. Yeah.
But it was 5 games in one day, and so it was in Brisbane, and we started at about 7:30 in the morning at a bowls club.
Oh my god!
And went through till about 10:30 at night. And we're on the booze from game 1 as well. And by the time the day finished, I think I'd already been drunk and then was hungover, and it was just absolutely shattered.
That's when you want to run into the person with your shooty arm and good, just sit there. I just roll your dice, mate. I'm drinking.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I still remember game 5. It's like 8:00 at night, and I said to the guy, "Oh, just 10-10, and let's just go hit the bar." And he goes, "No, I paid for 5 games. I want 5 games." And I'm like, "Are you serious?" So I had to play it out, and we had a draw. We had a 10-10.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, just
I was just going to say, Gummer, no, you go. Actually, I've lost my point already. It was important, but Julian's covered. I was going to say the team events were a good thing in 8th. And that's something I'd like to see people think about in
Mm.
terms of games that they're organising casually.
Mm.
We had a wonderful time. Was it 10 years ago now? I reckon, Julie. We went to Wellington, and we played in a team event. It was meant to be we had four of us, and the
Yeah.
main guy who was our better player. Decided he was a serious tournament player. He decided he'd much rather there was another event put on that he could get more points on for his standing, and he ditched us. But so the Kiwis
Oh,
very
what?
fortunately provided us with a stand-in, and we had a wonderful time though. This team event, like it was, they played a very competitive sort of style, I guess, but it was really a lot of fun, and quite a bit of a challenge as
Yeah.
well, because you're sort of comparing different matchups and things like that. That was a nice nuance to what that set of rules are like. But I was just thinking about sixth edition and the like, and there are lots of great scenarios. You can rip through the old 8th edition book and maybe apply them to a 6th edition set using those rules, for example. We've used oath mark and bolt action scenario ideas for taking objectives and things like that with our games. So there's a lot of things you can draw upon and sort of kind of renew. Playing 6, for example, which I think is probably the best edition at the moment in terms of playability and balance, despite, you can break it, but, there are ways to try to get that balance.
That's a good point about the teams, because that's another thing that I hear a lot from the 40K scene is the team events, and that the team events help neutralize some of those ridiculous skewed lists, because you can't every team might take it, but you've only got that many teams, and you know what I mean? Like, you can't have, if there's a 30-person event, you can't have 15 people taking a broken list, because no one can double up on, at least in their team, they can't double up on lists. So or armies, I should say, whatever, factions, whatever you call them. So yeah, I'd like to see that with the old world. Maybe that we do a
Yeah,
bit more
that was a lot.
teams.
That was a lot of fun. Be great to have that come back. We like Ben said, we played in that one in New Zealand, but I remember someone ran one in Canberra as well and had maybe 20 or so players. Yeah, doing all the matchups and everything. It's a lot of fun.
How big was each team for 20 players?
I think it was, I can't remember if it was 3 or 4. It was around about 20. I can't remember, but
Okay.
this is going back like 10 years now. But yeah, I can't remember how many rounds we did either, but yeah, it was good fun.
Hey, Andrew. Andrew's
Hey.
joined us for the end of the
Yeah,
interviews.
I
That's
didn't
good.
do want to
All
interrupt.
good, mate.
Hey guys.
G'day.
There you go.
Good.
All good. Hey, I might push it along a little bit. Like, so CanCon, because we have been talking about that. CanCon 2024. What's happening with that? We don't have TO. Is that correct? Or you guys are not doing that, are you?
No, look, I mean, there's been some noise from the Sydney crew. I'd never seen their Facebook page, but I don't know, they can correct us. But there is a Sydney 6th edition Warhammer fantasy group.
Mm-hmm.
They definitely have a messenger group, and I sort of, occasionally sort of lurk in the background, seeing what they're up to. But those wonderful people. They've got 2 tournaments that are going on. They are doing a 6 tournament at Mother of All Battles, which is a big, quite a decent sized convention to be held in Sydney. It's sort of held in the Shire, end of September, early October. And there's also going to be an 8th edition tournament happening at the same thing. It's called Moab. I don't know if you guys have ever gone to it, but
yeah, well, we had Pat. No, we haven't. Well, I haven't, but we had Patty on, who's running the 6th edition tournament last week.
So there is some noise from them. Some of them said, "Oh, yeah, we're going to put in a submission," but I'm not sure where that's gone. Look, the key thing with CanCon, and I'm not sure, Julian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the deadline's coming up. So if you're actually going to put an event on, you need to get a submission in to get in it. And the way it works with CanCon is you need to put a submission in, and you need to sort of basically sort of have a fair idea of what your minimum number of players is. And you also need to make a pitch. And the pitch often to Canberra Game Society about running at CanCon is about how many days you're going to run your event for. So they give priority to ones that it runs for 3 days, and then there's the 2 days and 1 days, and there's a bit of a movable feast in terms of like how people are going with their registrations. So yeah, it's yeah. So if people are getting, I'm not sure what's going on with those Sydney guys, and I do hope they have a crack of it. But yeah, don't know. I'm sure if I'm able to assist the camera with some terrain, but we haven't had anyone reach out to us as yet. But I know Julian's going to be doing Oathmark. Myself personally, I'm going to be overseas. Promised my dear wife that I'd finally would go away, and I might actually get to CanCon to play for a day or something because when I come back from overseas. But it'll be the first time I've missed CanCon in a very long time, probably like 15 years or something. So yeah,
Oh, jeez.
unfortunately won't be able to
You
run the event,
deserve it.
but yeah, but when I do, it's going to
Absolutely.
be nice to actually just go along and throw some dice, playing some Oathmark, which will be which Julian's is organised for that one. It's just a nice little small thing, not very stressful, sort of set of rules, and it's a nice, neat little game. I think, isn't it? That's the idea, really, isn't it, Julian?
Yeah, I think like Ben said, because you'll be away. I didn't want to do CanCon by myself. It's just too hectic. So yeah, that's why I guess we're not looking to do it. I guess if anyone was going to chuck in a registration, they would probably need to do it ASAP. Like Ben said, like I've registered to run the Oathmark event for CanCon, but that's only 12 players, so it's very easy as a single person to do that. But I submitted my registration for that maybe 2 months ago. So yeah, I think if someone was looking to do 6th edition, they do need to crack on because because the CanCon organisers, they'll be like dividing up the halls, looking at how many tables each event has asked for and trying to work out the numbers. Like what happened this year was that Ben and I only asked for was it 12 or 16 or something like that.
Yeah,
And
it
then
was
every
less than 20.
time, because we sort of did it based on how much terrain we owned, and then we had to start asking the community to donate terrain. And each time we got like a batch of more people offering up their terrain, we were able to expand the ticketing. But every time CGS did that, we were like eating into the table space of other events. So yeah, like that, they had sort of divided up what they thought each event said that they were going to take up. But then, you need your community to get onto their tickets as quickly as possible so you can basically eat up the space. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully if someone is going to run it, hopefully they've registered already and CGS is sort of planning that enough space for them.
Yeah. Is it something doable if you were based interstate to TO at CanCon?
Yeah, I think so. 99% of the work is just done online in the lead up to the event. So, preparing a players pack, getting in touch with potential sponsors, just doing communication to the players and all that sort of thing. The only sort of thing that you actually need to physically be here for is the day before the event. CGS opened up the halls. I think it was like around midday this year, but you could turn up potentially even as late as like quite late into the evening. So even if you were traveling interstate and you were arriving, the afternoon before the event sort of thing, you could still just turn up with all your terrain. And CGS basically they set up all the tables and the tabletops for you, and you just have to come in with your mats and your terrain and set it all up. So I think if you were interstate, you'd probably have to travel with a certain amount of your own terrain, and then pretty much do what we did, which is getting in touch with the Canberra community or potentially other people travelling and asking them to donate terrain. And what we did with all those people was ask them to meet us at the hall at a certain time, and they all rocked up, and we just sort of said, you set up your tables here and you over here, and we let them set up the terrain on each of their tables as they wanted. So yeah, it's totally doable from interstate.
Oh, cool. That's good to know. I know Josh was tempted. That's good. Hey, well, let's should we move on? Just get your thoughts. We were going to just quickly cover some, what you just ran in Retro Hammer and stuff. But before then, I want to just get your thoughts a little bit on the old world, and you've sort of hinted that a little bit just through the discussions. But I mean, I guess from don't know what the best way here is. Maybe just each of you guys, like, what are your thoughts on the old world in terms of what you've seen so far? Yeah, how's it sitting with you, I guess?
For me, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's hard to say whether it'll be good or not because we have such limited details. But I guess from what we do know, I like this fact that the base sizes are increasing so that you can rank up your models easier.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who uses Empire Halberdiers and Bloodletters and terrible units like that, which are just horrendous to rank up. I think increased base sizes will be great. And I don't know if GW's confirmed it or whether it's just the rumors constantly swirling, but the idea of some of the older plastic kits coming back into production, I'm quite looking forward to that. I'd definitely like to pick up some of the Orc stuff. The multi-part, just the regular Orc boys and Orc War boys. So I hope that they do bring back some of the old kits. That'd be nice.
They definitely mentioned it. I'm pretty sure they mentioned it when they pulled the cities, it's like the Empire line, that's going to be show back up. Oh, and the Black Orcs, they pulled them for the, for the new whatever came out the other day, and they said they're getting, in preparation for the old world. So I'm pretty much, and I think they said it about Tomb Kings. I'm pretty sure.
So hopefully we see some of those kits because at the moment I'm painting about 40 the 4th edition, 5th edition orcs, the monopose ones. The orcs standing there with the giant scimitar. So I'm doing some of those at the moment, and I've already got a bunch of orcs that I painted in 8th edition. So it'd be nice to get a few more boxes and finish off the army. But in terms of rules, who knows? I think there's such limited details at this stage.
Is there any? Ben, what are you looking forward to, or what's your thoughts?
Look, it'll be nice to have some new models. It also, like Julian's saying, it'll be nice for people who have access to older kits that have been removed from the range. Look, I think I'm excited about the idea of there just being some new content and support by a big trader. So for this for that'll be good. That'll be a good fun thing. I guess we can sort of anticipate, and if they have made noises about providing a gateway at the start, so that all factions that currently sort of existed in 8th, they've said will be playable. So I guess in terms of 6th, they did that. Was it Ravening Hordes, which was a bridge between 5th edition into 6th edition in terms of before those new army books were put out for people to play with. That stuff's going to be fun and interesting. The narrative thing I think is kind of enjoyable. I like the idea of they're sort of really focusing in on the sort of the old world area and then expanding on in a different timeline. It's funny though. You get some people that get particularly obsessed with the timeline stuff that you find on YouTube. It's as if it's real history. You can't do that because it happened in 1112, and you're like, oh mate, no, like it's nice to have some fluff, but gee whiz, it's not literally the word. So look, that's fine, and I mean that's also coupled with I'm one of those people who for me, there's no such thing as the end of. I don't know what they were talking about. End of day. I don't know what they mean. End of times, end of days. It's irrelevant. Because I refuse to. I'm in denial. Some would say. I just say, well, it just didn't happen.
I love it.
It didn't happen. So, I think that's the thing. Like, I'll give it a go and try it out. But I mean, the great thing about those older edition of books and the fluff and even all the backstories is, well, why not? You'll get some new ideas and maybe new ideas and some of the old ideas you can incorporate into terms of how you're going to play with your mates and your friends in terms of a new set of rules. I like some of the design notes that sounded a little bit 3rd edition-ish in terms of the idea of pushbacks from combats, or even Warhammer Ancients has that in terms of you have a pushback sort of thing happen in a fight. You might win and decide to push your opponent back a little bit rather than just a follow up. That was an interesting thing in Warhammer Ancients, as well as it's something that happens in Warmaster as well. And I'm intrigued about what was written about the magic phase. The magic phase might be something, maybe if it's Warmaster inspired. I don't know if you guys have ever played that. It's very neat and simple. The magic in that is a nice little buff, but it's not going to, it's not going to win you the game. So I'm intrigued to sort of see how those things go. But at the same time, like I think, if you've been around, it's probably important to just take it all with a grain of salt, enjoy the ride and enjoy the new toys, but don't get sort of too hung up about
Yeah,
it because there's lots of grown men having and well, not very many women, but having tears about stuff that's beyond their control. At the end of the day, it's a company trying to make money, and
Yeah.
hopefully you can influence them to do things that you like. But really, you should just look to the people you play with and adopt your own house rules and the like about how you want to play. And with tournaments, well, like we were sort of saying before, the tournaments we've enjoyed running at ones where we just want everyone to have a nice, balanced, fun time. Yeah, it can be competitive, but we don't necessarily want to encourage the antisocial sort of behaviour that has existed and used to be a bit of a curse for some of the large events around the place and can still happen in some sort of tournament settings. It's definitely not the best of tabletop wargamers, which is a shame really, because we are talking about a wonderful hobby, which is all about actually interacting with people as opposed to doing it online.
Yeah. So let's just end the sort of this question bit with I don't know if you saw the run sheet I had, like if you could tell GW just one thing to get right with the old world. Do you guys have any thoughts on that one?
That doesn't have to be rules. It could be anything.
For me, it would be the overall figure count for your army, and not setting it too high. I think like a game like 6th edition or 5th edition, you don't have too many figures to collect and paint. Whereas with 8th edition, you take 1 or 2 hordes in your army, and that's a monumental painting effort to get through. And it's also extremely expensive for a lot of people. So,
yeah,
I would say just keeping the size of the armies under control would be conducive to actually people getting into the hobby, and then finishing an army, because it's very dispiriting to, I think, for a lot of people to collect something and not have the will to finish it. And then I think for people that do manage to power through it and paint up an army, you can start another one. Rather than having one gigantic one. I think just keeping a good size for the army would be, I think, the best thing in terms of the health of the game.
Yeah, I reckon more fluff probably might be the saving grace of it, as opposed to too much of an emphasis on the latest monstrous model of the month. I don't know if you guys remember with Vape, you'd have that situation where power creep was something at one point in the hobby, or it might be um, a new model or a new unit would come along and people would just go, "Oh, I have to buy that." And we see that happen in the 40k universe. Like, it's one of the reasons why it never stuck with me as a kid, because it just seemed to be the kid who got more pocket money than you was always going to have the better force, because they were able to buy the brand new spanking dreadnought that you couldn't afford. So I think that I get they're trying to run a business, they're going to sell models, but I think plenty of fluff in terms of providing a sort of the narratives and scenarios, ideas for running. Maybe how you'd run little side projects, like how you'd run siege rules again, or running a campaign. What does a campaign look like in 2023 as opposed to when In Mighty Empires was written in the late 90s, a fantastic supplement. Things we've got excellent tech we can use these days to actually really fill in the universes that we're going to play and fight Warhammer around. So building on that world building that Total War has done for the hobby would be a good thing to see. And I think that's, if you think about, I've been thinking about the fact that that's one of the things why the game's never completely died out, is because of the world building and the immersion that sort of over a very long period of time has sort of kept on. So I think if they lean into that, they could definitely make money out of that, and they'd probably keep people interested. But that's probably also another reason why it's not going to be like a release like 40k in terms of constant churn of figures. I think I want to see some new stuff, and I hope they do that. But I just really hope they're going to lean more on sort of providing something that people are just going to keep going back to and wanting to play, and then giving them ideas. I'd definitely support that. Would be what I'd like to see, as opposed to you know. I look, at one point it felt like the hairdressers had taken over writing. It's like this old joke. When a TV series is the
Yeah.
hairdressers have taken over the writing. it's like, yeah, that was what 8th really sort of turned into. It was like, they're beautiful models, but it was pretty obvious that no one's actually playing the game that was, writing the rules or doing the very lovely army books. It was terrible. So I want to see something that's not going to fall over like that last one did.
Shall we talk a little bit about the recent tournament that you guys both ran and attended, each of you, I guess? Retro Hammer. Julian, I was interested that you went for a 1,700 point tournament.
Yep.
What was the thinking behind that?
The idea was we were playing at Jolt, and they don't open until 10 o'clock. And that's when they'll let me in to set up the tables as well. So I had to rush in as everyone else is walking in, quickly set up the tables, and then so we've only got from 10:15 till about 5 o'clock to basically run the event. And I figured if I went for a larger size points, say around 2,000, people need about 2.5 hours, and you just simply can't really fit that in for the day.
Sure.
So it was either going to do 2 games at 2,000 points or 3 games at a smaller points level. And yeah, so I allowed the players 2 hours per game. And I thought, what's sort of like a reasonable amount of points that they can get through in 2 hours. So we went with 1,700, and I think almost everyone finished all of their games. So it was a pretty good level. But yeah, I think for 3 games, you could probably also maybe go 1,500 or 17 or something around there, and people can get through their games in time.
Yeah, pretty practical reason by the sound of it.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's also
just literal time.
Yeah, that sort of format of that amount of points is really different too. So if you do find yourself playing a lot of 2,000 point games, highly recommend trying smaller value points games in 6, because you end up it would probably encourage you to design a list different to how you'd normally play. Look, it was kind of fun on the one hand having Tomb King or VC players, obviously not great if they're not taking their Lord sort of stuff. That can be a handicap for them. But I mean, at the same time, not every army is going to have. You could come up with other creative ways to do your list, I guess. I'm not sure how we'd quite sort of cater to that, but I think smaller point games can be good entry level as well for newer people who aren't all that familiar with the malarkey. They don't need as many models or the like, but as well as the magic phases are a lot less complicated in terms of you've got less options, don't you? You're only going to have so many spells to use, and the magic phase is pretty neat already in 6 and less complicated than later editions. So yeah, 1,700 works really well from my perspective. I know it's something we're going to be using next month. Got a one-day tournament as part of our local gaming club. It's got an event coming up in October. I'm going to stick with the 1,700 to be able to squeeze those games through. And I guess the last thing I'd say about 1,700 points too in a tournament setting, say with 6, or even if you're going to do it as 8th, is smaller points can actually also ensure that people are more likely to finish their games. Because let's face it, some of us are new or forget things, or all older and like taking our time. If you're playing a smaller point game, there's one way to sort of compensate for delay. I don't think it's great to sit there and play a full 2.5 hour, like 2.5 hour games is really silly. You want to try to, go through at a steady pace, and ideally you're going to finish a game in less than 2 hours.
I mean, I must admit, having played a lot of 8 back in the day, and very often getting 2.5 hours and maybe 4 turns in, I've been pleasantly surprised at how often you get the full 6 turns through, and often it's 2.25 hours, or even 2 hours sometimes.
I agree.
Yeah,
It's hard to know.
I find the same with 6 as well. I can get through it a lot faster.
What do you think it is? Is it because we're not rolling quite so many dice? Is it because things are failing, leadership tests are running off the board, and so things just sort of play out more quickly?
Yeah, I think so. I think less dice, right? Like, because dead models can't fight back. No one steps up. So sometimes when you're the one getting attacked, you might only have 1 or 2 dice to roll in response, which is nice and quick.
Yep.
And then, like, after a combat, you can't pivot your unit. So people used to spend, might only be a minute or two each time they do it, but like they're pivoting their unit and trying to, do a combat reform and keep the angles exactly right so they're not getting flanked in the following turn and whatever. You can't do that in 6. So yeah, you finish the combat and you just move straight on to the next thing.
Yeah, which is a nice way of punishing poor movement, I feel like. 8th, you had a lot of backup for mitigating disastrous situations.
Yeah, and also I feel like there's less rerolls in 6th as well. So remember in 8th, all the elves almost used to be re-rolling everything.
Yeah.
And then you had the battle standard bearers, which let you re-roll every psychology test instead of just your break test. So yeah, you're just re-rolling more dice and sucking up more time.
Yeah.
I mean, look, having a unit break due to a fear-causing unit in 6 is quite a shock. First time it happens to you.
Love it.
If you, but it's like what? But yeah, and look, no such thing as a Swift reform is quite an amazing thing. That ability to, you've crushed something and then just move around. Oh, no, you don't get to do that. So it's also, I think there's an almost there's a little bit of a chess element going on there in 6 that takes a little bit of getting your mind used to. It's sort of that's why you have to think more about the deployment phase, I think, in many ways, because you don't have that maneuverability that you had in 8th, which can be frustrating. But I think it is actually really rewarding if you sort of think, I've deployed well. The units that I wanted to charge, I got into. There's things like that go on. You have to sort of come up with a strategy at the start of the game, as opposed to, I think, an 8th was quite forgiving of that because you're able to sort of do magic maneuvers and all of a sudden, I'm in your rear now, or now I've just turned around, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different type of game. So I did find that a bit of an adjustment the first couple of times I played 6, but now it's like even that idea that you get charged and you find yourself not being able to fight back used to be sort of a cause of outrage. You do find yourself sort of going, well, okay, they don't get to fight back, but if they survive the round, they get to fight the next round, and there's only so many dice you're rolling. So there's some really neat things in that set of rules. I think make for a bit of a cleaner game in terms of there's only so many things that you can do that make speed it up a bit.
Yeah, well, 8th and obviously 9th age that myself, Josh, and Gomo played. Like the rules were just getting a little bit, there was rules for everything. In the end, like it was getting a bit out of control almost. That's one good thing I found definitely with 6th, as you were saying. It's just a simpler, cleaner format.
I love the armies in
yeah.
9th. It's fantastic. The Warhammer Army projects and things like that. Some great ideas, but I did find that the 9th games I played was just too much dice for me. But
Yeah. No,
I do.
100%.
The only thing I miss in 6 is like a little bit of going against some of the, like I did like some of the toys that 8th brought out, just some variability. Like I don't mind some of that monstrous infantry, monstrous cav, that some of the stuff's there, as long as it's not totally over, powering the game. And I miss a little bit of that. Sort of going back, I'd like to see how that would fit in a 6th edition well, because you got less potentially smaller units and everything. If anything, it could lend you to have a smaller figure count army anyway, because you might have you might have demigryphs in your Empire army as well, and so you're not having to have you're not painting even as many figures. So it'd be interesting, because obviously I'm assuming with the old world that some of those old kits will come back, so it might be a little bit of this weird mishmash of 6th edition units, but with some of these bigger units that were starting to creep out in 8th. So interesting to see how they get it.
Okay, going back to Retro Hammer anyway, slight detour there, guys.
Yeah. Comparison of 8th.
So yeah, maybe we can maybe Julian, if we just briefly cover how the event went overall, and then maybe Ben can talk, through his list and the games and how he went participating in it.
Yeah, sure. It was, we ended up having 12 players. Had a good mix of armies, including a couple of Dogs of War, Orcs and Goblins, High Elves, Wood Elves, Warriors of Chaos. So good mix of things, which was nice to see. Everyone was pretty chill. I didn't ask to see lists or anything prior to the event. I just asked everyone to be mindful of bringing something that would be fun to play against. And I think, yeah, absolutely everybody did that. Brought fun armies, and I don't think anyone brought anything that was overly strong, which was great to see. Yeah, it went well. We ended up having a draw for first place at the end, and because I was too lazy to record victory points, I ended up just having the two winners have to do a dice off to determine first and second.
It's like a soccer match.
Yeah, yeah, because I was just putting the points into the spreadsheet on my phone, and yeah, I couldn't really be bothered doing the victory points. So, but no, we end up having a winner at the end, so that was all good. Just to keep things simple as well, because we had a number of new people sign up that I think weren't too familiar with the game, so we ended up having battle line for 2 scenarios, just to keep it simple. And for the second scenario, I just I made up a custom one where I put 2 objectives on the center line, maybe about 12 inches out from the center, thereabouts. I didn't actually measure it. I just sort of looked at each table and looked what would be like a nice, logical spot where it would look good amongst the terrain. And I put these 2 objectives on the table. At the end of the game, they were worth victory points, but I think more importantly, during the game, they had an in-game effect. So if you controlled one of the an objective, it would drain away an enemy's power dice during their magic phase. And the reason I did that was rather than just having an objective to capture at the end of the game, where some armies might sit back, shoot, or whatever, and then they zip up at the last turn and grab it. I wanted you to encourage the player to actually have to advance and take the objective early in the game, and force that confrontation. And then also, I think Magic, of all 6th edition being a good game, I think Magic can be quite powerful. So I liked the idea of taking control of the objectives and draining away a power dice. So yeah, I think that scenario went pretty well. Yeah, and overall it was a good event.
So how did you go, Ben, in it? You obviously played in it.
Yeah,
then,
middle
did
of the
you?
pack, halfway hero prize. So gave it a go. That is actually our favourite award with the events we run, is the halfway hero. Or it's mine. But it's that idea, we don't do wooden spoons. It's if you come halfway, it's like, well, you had a go. And that's really pretty much the luck of people who are really into playing the game. If you've come in the middle of the pack, well, that's fantastic. It means you had your chances and it just wasn't your time. But you had a good old crack.
I'll take that award for Castle Assault then. 50 out of 100.
Yeah, take that one.
Right
I think it's a much better way to do it. I mean, I don't know. I was talking to people about coming across people who used to sort of, literally play for the wooden spoon for a prize. I mean, it's just insane. So I think halfway is a better one.
Yeah.
I had a great time. I was running my Woodies. I mean, 1,700. Look, Wood Elves at 1,700 points are probably a bit of a nasty list, and I could have made them even more nasty. I basically made sure I didn't take a tree man. I didn't take or any snipey stuff. I didn't take the there's that one use item that they've got. You can use a sprite to target an enemy character, and they've got to take a leadership test. And if they fail, it's like D3 wounds, no save of any kind. You can just literally kill their
Sniper.
yeah.
Ouch.
But like these
Wow.
are just these are things. If you were a real mongrel, you'd take that. Yeah, I didn't do that. So I had 2 lots of dryads. I had a big block of eternal guard using the bodyguard. Did a very 1,700 points too. I think it's a good fun game. Is don't use much shooting. So I had a block of 7 eternal guard and 2 lots of glade riders. Musos. What else did I do? Oh yeah, I had a solid big unit of treekin. That's where it broke. People could cry about that one, but I had like running about 6 of them. Big point sink. But they are. I mean, the Wood Elves I'm always amazed in sixes how solid they are, and I think I now finally understand why people were so upset in eighth as to, why they had a lot of problems being competitive with that when the 6th edition book was being used for such a long time and 8th edition was around. It was not much of a match up for them, unfortunately. But yeah, that's a really fun list to play with because you've got very limited shooting and you're just basically going up, using the flanks and I'm going to go. The first game I played pretty much a high elf sort of gun line, 2 bolt throwers, 2 lots of archers, decent block of spearmen and sword masters. Great guy I played with, but had his chances, but he fluffed his shooting, and it was pretty much all over by turn 3. Fought it through, and it was. I mean, I didn't mind the game, but yeah, it was just to be over. But the next game I played a local guy called Goldie, who was one of the original organisers for what used to be DogCon back in the day for 6th edition. So,
mhm.
and those dog cons used to be huge, 300 player type sort of events. Yeah.
Geez.
So his models are fantastic to look at. He had his orcs and goblin list, but this particular list was one of those back of the book ones, which was basically this character that enabled him to take basically a complete army just full of biggins. Can you remember the name of that one?
I think it was it was the Storm of Chaos. It was the Grimgore's Ardboys list.
Yeah.
So every orc
right.
unit was upgraded to biggins.
Yeah. So that was
It was a cool
That
army.
was really hard to play. Had a great game, but I was really happy to walk away with a draw. So first game, did really well. But yeah, second game was a draw, and the last game, I completely fluffed it. It was one of those ones you play where you're going, yeah, I should have won, but you just, the gods were not with me. That one. I'm trying to remember. Can you remember who I played, Julian?
That was
The third game.
yeah. Wasn't that Vampire Counts?
Oh yeah, no, it was a brutal game. It's that I hadn't seen anyone use it before, but
Not the Sylvania list.
no, it was the monster
No, it was the Necra
necro.
list. So he could take an unridden zombie dragon
Oh.
as a rare
Oh,
choice. It was one of the back of the book
yeah,
lists.
and this thing would just drain. It was like you're getting neg ones to hit. So you,
Yeah, I think it was the zombie dragon has a rule that you're -1 to hit it, and then he had a character with the cursed book, which has a 6-inch bubble of
Oh,
-1 to
yeah.
hit. So sometimes, yeah, when I did come over to your
Yeah,
table,
right.
That's the
the
worst.
dragon and that character happened to be in the same
yeah,
combat, and so yeah, Ben's troops were at
Oh,
-2 to
yeah.
hit.
So
Oh
Yeah.
God.
the answer, yeah, I needed the roll high, and it just wasn't happening for me. It was a brutal game, but I wasn't tabled, so that was the most important thing. But yeah, still crawled away some points. But that was an interesting learning lesson because hadn't come across that build before in the flesh. So yeah, that was fun. And I think the event I'm running pretty soon, probably just going to rip off what Julian's make up for this Retro Hammer one. But like we're saying, I think guys are looking for quick, easy events so you can squeeze in a bit of time, particularly for people who've got responsibilities and the like. 3 games of 1,700 points is one way to churn through a day of playing 6th edition and still getting yourself home at 5 o'clock to sort out the kids or whatever. So, yeah, I recommend
Yeah,
that
yeah.
format. But if you're going to do 2,000 points, you have to be really disciplined about how you're going to run that because it's too much to manage. Um, Otherwise,
Yeah, I think you've either got to start at 9
yeah,
o'clock or do two games
yeah.
only. Yeah.
cool.
No, it sounds pretty successful, and yeah. So you have another one coming up. That's just obviously local.
Yeah, we do get guys.
Like
We
it's not, but it's
I mean, any people. Well, people are more than welcome from interstate, but yeah, we run this Belcon thing in North Canberra, but the problem we there's a number of systems that run for it, and again we sort of compete in terms of who's going to get the most number of tables. Um, I don't think they're going to let us have any more than 16
Mm.
spots really, because it depends on who's managed to pull their finger out and organise a tournament. But yeah, that one is coming up. But if people from interstate are welcome to that one, and we do post it up on our page and that. But we'll put on Warhammer Fantasy Australia is main Facebook page that we occasionally put up stuff for people interstate. We encourage people from interstate who are, as one way to sort of, seems to be a good little spot for people to place things that they're doing, I think. Yeah.
I did see your one pop up, so I just can't remember what group it was on, but yeah, it is. I did see the Belcon one, so yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, does anyone else have any other questions for Julian and Ben while we got them?
No, I think we've covered most of what we wanted to cover, really.
What's on there? Yeah. No, well, man, we appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for coming on. We always joke about how long these things are going. They always go longer than it's good. I think everyone just loves talking about Warhammer, so that's why we start. That's why we started the podcast, because look, everyone's going to be just so on top of it and thirsty for it, when the old world gets here. So yeah, it's need more content.
Thanks so much for having us. It's lovely to have a chat.
No, it's been great, and I was very glad to see Miniature Realms gave you guys a shout out the other day, Stuart from Miniature Realms. So I was like, oh, that's cool. He's a fantastic content creator on YouTube. His painting's fantastic. Does really good tutorials for people who haven't checked his gear out, and he's very system agnostic, but he's having a bit of a nostalgia, like a few of us, about Warhammer Fantasy. So yeah, recommend him. And I mean, might also say, like, I don't know what you guys are listening or looking at the moment, but Jordan Sorcery, for people who haven't seen him, you guys come across him?
Yeah, rate that on his page on
Oh,
Patreon.
good on you. I mean, he's great.
He's just yeah. What he's doing for the community is just awesome. So
lots of good stuff. Rogue Element. That was his name, Stoss or whatever in Queensland.
Stoss.
Doing solid stuff. I just wish he wasn't living so far away. I'd love to play him, but hopping on.
Wouldn't we all?
No, but I'm glad to say. Is he? He's moving away from dwarves, the stunties. He's actually going to play some VCs though, or something, isn't it? A story he was painting them.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen him.
He's painting some 6th edition vampires for a bit.
Yeah, he's had one vampire game the other day. He put a video up.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, he's definitely playing them.
No,
it's good.
That's cool. And I'd like to also shout out. I mean, the other bit of content I've been, I always have a Cast Dice. Our man Brad down in Victoria, his systems, he just plays so many different games, but he's always good for a bit of a shout out about nostalgia and 40 playing Warhammer Fantasy and the like. I think it's good ones to check out. So I don't know. That's what, I recommend people check those out. But it's really great to have you guys, putting some content out and having a good chat. I did find it amusing. Stuart from Miniature Worlds was pointing out this is a lot less sweary than some of the more renowned podcasts that Aussie ones. Yeah, there's not nothing wrong with having.
I've been told to behave.
A bit of swear,
audience.
I don't know. Yeah,
rated.
I enjoyed playing Dave Palmer at Castle. As soon as I knew what he was like, we were onto it. So that was good.
No. I mean, I've got a filthy mouth. It's just that I know other people, a lot of people listening. So. But really appreciate your work, guys. So it's been great to have a chat.
Awesome. Cheers. Yeah, and then thanks so much for your time. And hopefully we'll get you guys back on at a future episode.
Yeah, great.
No worries. All right. Thanks so much.
Wow. Well, that was longer discussion than I thought, but thanks so much, Julian and Ben, for coming on. What do you guys think? It's always good to see good TOs doing a lot of work.
They were great.
Yeah.
They were super informative, lovely guys. I think they do some really good work supporting the community, and I feel like they need more support, really, setting up tournaments and events to build sort of a community for everyone to sort of enjoy.
Totally. It's a good point. And hopefully people will step up more, and us included and stuff, obviously the podcast, but obviously running events is what we need. And so hopefully with the old world and a bit more, bringing the community back together, I think hopefully won't leave it up to a couple of people to sort of keep everything going.
I just the more people you meet within the Six community, you just realize like it's actually a really nice group of people. Like it's not super competitive. It's competitive, like which everybody wants, but like it is that fun. It is, not having stupid lists and just I just another couple of great guys I've met, and it's every time I meet more people than the community, it just draws me closer in. I'm just like, this is actually
Yeah.
really
And it's
good
what
community.
I mean, I'll sort of mention on the interview, like that's what I missed once Eighth died. I just felt like the others just didn't do it as much. That's why I sort of fell out of it a bit, I guess. But and you always hear that 40K is more, I don't know, just like hardcore competitive a bit. And I
Yeah.
don't know, is it just the age in fantasy? Just gamers are just more after a bit of fun. I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, I think they're like the fluff as well. Like like
Mm,
it's that narrative a bit. I think fantasy loves that narrative, and yeah, sometimes the narrative takes precedence over always you have to win. It's like
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. Oh, anyway, so we're going to plan on, I guess our next, just before we wrap up here, our next episodes, actually probably next 2 episodes, we're thinking might be Army book review. We've found, and other podcasters will laugh at this, that our episodes start off thinking, it'll be an hour, and then it's 2 hours later. So I think if we get into an Army book review, it's not going to be even 2 hours. It might
No,
be.
we were going to attack the Arm Book review on the back of the interview
Well,
originally, and it's just
originally,
like
but I think it was more me just
It's not-
writing options. I didn't think it would be that, but yes, you're right. Once we went, that's not going to work. So I think at the moment we're penciling that maybe the next 2 episodes. So I don't know how we haven't talked about it yet, but how we might split it, whether or not we do lore next week and then, more gaming the one after. We'll have to play around with it, I guess, guys, this week and see where we go. But we're at this point we're aiming for, I guess, the Empire, because some of the other podcasts we know about have done some of the other armies. We sort of compared, I guess, what armies we either have or were interested in. I think that's how we came up with the Empire, was it?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, something we
that.
sort of knew about, yeah.
Yeah.
To some degree.
And I don't know, it feels old worldish in terms of compatible. Do you know what I mean? Like,
smack bang in the middle of it, isn't it?
yeah,
Like,
it is the old world. So
yeah.
good place to start, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we'll hopefully do all of the armies at some point.
Yep.
Hopefully. Anyway, cool. Well, yeah. Anything else you want to say on that? Otherwise, we might let listeners go.
No, I was just
No,
gonna
all
say,
good.
thanks to all the international guys. Like, I can't believe how many people from around the globe have been listening in. So, our friends in Chile, Ukraine, just everywhere. I couldn't believe it. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh, thanks for all the listeners. Hey, we've had great uptake, and obviously it gives us the momentum and the willpower to keep recording on a
100%.
Monday. So
Yeah.
it's good, and keeps us hobbying. So I love it.
Definitely does.
Cool.
Yep.
Anyway, guys, I'll let you get back to your Monday nights then. And thanks, like we just said, thanks for listening to the Old World Fanatics. Please rate us if you are listening. Obviously subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast software of choice, because it does helps us get out there a bit. But yeah, obviously you can talk to us on socials, send us any pictures or suggestions. And we're pretty much oldworldfanatics@gmail.com, Old World Fanatics on Instagram, and Old World Fanatic on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it. So, yep, please, like, subscribe, share, listen, do all that sort of stuff. And we'll talk next week when we're discussing the Empire. So thanks a lot, everyone. And I'll talk to you guys next week.
Cheers,
Ciao.
guys. Right, see ya.
Thanks.